Hey, this is Dominic, and this is your home for the cutting-edge conversations on optimizing your personal performance, lighting up your sex life, and living a purpose-driven life of your own design.
These are the topics that Dominic and I have both struggled with in our own lives and still don't always get right. This is Brian. Welcome to the Great Man Podcast.
Have you ever wanted to do public speaking but are terrified of the stage? Have you ever wanted to launch a blog but are scared of being criticized? Have you ever wanted to go after your dream career but are afraid of failing? These fears are the limits of your liberation. These fears are like invisible walls keeping you from the very things you want most in life. The thing our guest today wanted most in life was to learn how to love his body as much as he loved the man on the inside. But he was always afraid of allowing his body to be seen because he carried shame around its appearance. That lifelong fear was his invisible wall, keeping him from liberation and self-love. Until he took the bold move of doing what scared him most, taking his shirt off in the middle of a circle of 20 men and standing tall amidst a tornado of terrifying internal emotions. But let me back up for a second. Over these last 11 years of doing and leading inner work, it's become crystal clear that there are three big energies that control or sabotage most men's lives. Those are the energies of fear, anger, and sexual energy. Many men's lives will be dictated or boxed in or at least heavily influenced by these three big energies. That can feel disempowering, suffocating, imprisoning even. However, when a man learns how to step into the arena and train to dance with these energies that once used to sabotage him, then the entire trajectory of his life changes. So today, we will be honing in on the energy of fear and how walking towards the edge of your fears and doing what scares you most can be your path to liberation. All right, we've talked about one of the principles on the show is leaning out over your edge in everything you do. That's to help you confront that energy of fear. And now, our special guest for this discussion is the very first man I ever called a brother, Mike DeCoursey. I never had a biological brother, but I never needed one. Mike DeCoursey, or Deco as we call him in the Mastermind, has been my brother since back before my memory switched on over, 35, 36 years ago. Now, throughout his life, Deco has faced extraordinary adversity. He lost his father to a sudden aneurysm at age 7. He was at ground zero on 9/11 and barely survived. He was diagnosed with a life-threatening illness 5 years ago. And earlier this year, he survived a life-threatening aneurysm where he almost lost his life and almost lost his leg. Now, Deco has had a lifelong battle with his weight and body image, causing him to say, "I've always loved the man on the inside, but I haven't always loved what I've seen on the outside." And by doing what scared him most, he broke free from the shackles of shame and took a giant leap towards the feelings he desires most in life. And he's here to teach you how to do the same in your life. So in today's episode, Deco will share how he found the courage to do the thing that terrified him most. And spoiler alert, it was prompted by a podcast episode we recently released on body shame with Mordecai. How doing what scares you the most also sets off a chain reaction of vulnerability that inspires others in your life to step towards their edges. How having a group of trusted men in your life will allow you to confront your fears, to take bigger risks, and live your life as your great man. And finally, we have a first on today's episode. We have our very first Rick reveal. Rick is the name that we give people when we tell stories on the show that we want to protect their identities. Well, Deco is coming on today's episode to actually claim ownership of a recent Rick story that we told. And that is our very first of 200 and something episodes, 230, 40 episodes, our very first Rick reveal. Enjoy today's episode on doing what scares you most will set you free, featuring Mike DeCoursey. So fellas, in the Mastermind, our theme for the next 90 days is adventures in ... adventures in anything. You get to fill in the blank, right? Like, and the idea is that anything in your life can be turned into an adventure if you bring that mindset to it. So this morning, Friday morning, I decided to do adventures in coffee. And I live in New York City, so I went on an adventure to find the best mocha latte in my neighborhood. And I went to Greenwich Village. I walked into Cafe Reggio, ordered a decaf mocha, took 2 sips, and threw that piece of trash out. Like, it was terrible. It didn't even taste like chocolate. It was bitter. So it was 0 out of 10. And now I'm sipping on Coffee Bakery Kitchen, which is too sweet of a mocha latte. So I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. I'm still on the hunt, fellas, for the best mocha latte in my neighborhood.
Such an adventure. I didn't know this was a theme for the next 90 days, but I am there. This one is built for Brian. I've been doing little adventures like this for a long time. Since college, when I started buying my own food, I'd go to the grocery store. My adventure was always get at least one new product that I've never tried before, or new food or whatever. I've been doing that for years. But you mentioned mocha latte, and I've been doing what you're talking about with matcha lattes for years. A previous partner of mine in New York City, we went after the same thing. We wanted to figure out, like, what do we really like about matcha lattes? What are the best ones? And so we put a rating system together. And our rating system consisted of a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being awful, 5 being great, aesthetic, temperature, texture, flavor, atmosphere, and overall sensation.
You guys are bougie, man. Jeez.
And here I have one from the date of December 11th, 2019, from the Standard Hotel. It was a $6 matcha latte with almond milk.
How does price not factor in?
So it's not a rating, it's the actual price. So it was $6.
I know, but I mean, how do you not have, like, you should factor that in. Like, if it's a $6 thing and you know what I mean? That does have an impact on your rating, I would imagine.
This is why it's your adventure, Dominic. When you do your mocha lattes, you can definitely, absolutely do it. Price point 1 to 5, baby.
Okay.
So this one from 2011, 2019, I have a note in here also. And it says, for real? ? Chunks of matcha? Ugh. So I was apparently not happy. This got a low rating.
Yeah. That's a fly-by-night operation. It doesn't deserve a high rating. Deco, don't you love, there was that show that Dave Portnoy puts together where he goes and, like, he goes to a pizza place.
One bite.
And then how's that work?
One bite. Everyone knows the rules. He takes a bite of pizza. He goes to like thousands of pizza places all over and he rates it. I mean, he has guests on and everything. It's great. So
he takes one bite of a pizza and then he makes an instant snap rating. Just based on that one bite.
Yeah, just based on feeling. He doesn't have as, a formula like Brian has with his coffee. But this is more just instinct.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, guys, so I mentioned this on a recent episode where I said, and these are using Mark Melvin's words, I feel like a billionaire when it comes to the male relationships that I have in my life. And I think I said this on an episode where I did called, Do You Have Buddies or Brothers? And I'm looking at 2 men right here who I consider brothers of the deepest regard. And it's actually kind of mind-bending right now because I look at Brian, you're like the closest male relationship, a best friend that I've developed over these last 5 years, which I've said to you before, like I didn't think ever in my existence that you could develop a best friend relationship this late in life. That was a limiting belief because we've clearly shown otherwise. And then I'm looking at you, Deco, who's the guy I've known the longest in my life. Like, our relationship spans back to as early as I have memories from. And I've never had a brother, like a biological brother, but you're always the one that I look at in that regard. And it's so cool to be doing this episode together with the both of you.
I appreciate that. I mean, I knew this day was coming. I'd like to say you guys were saving the best for last, but I know you got plenty of episodes in you still. And I even thought, am I the guest that you've known the longest? And I think I win that award. So I'm just going to self-proclaim and give myself that award, if that's all right.
Brian, don't you have something to say about that award?
Yeah, it's very Trump-like. It's like you make the award, then you give it to yourself, and you can always win that way. That's how it works.
Well, I'm not starting off great getting a Trump comparison right off the bat.
But yeah, I think by far you are the guest that I've known the longest on the show. And welcome, man. Our relationship has spanned 35 years, from being childhood friends. And actually, here's a fun fact. Brian, I don't think you know this. I was not actually the first Quartuccio to meet Deco. It was my sister, Mary, who went to like pre-K with DeCoursey, and she came home from school one day. My parents still tell the story, and she's like, I met a boy at school. His name is Michael, Michael. Like she spelled out his name. And so I don't know if she had like a crush on you or something, Deco, but she was the one who basically, I think like, I don't know, introduced the two of us. So she met you first. And again, another one of the reasons why I love my sister, like a spiritual guide in my life. She brought, my longest best friend relationship into my life.
Yeah, I love that story. And I love how your parents still tell it to this day.
Yeah, my parents tell a number of stories about how, like all the times that you've come over, how you hit a foul ball one day and smashed my father's windshield in the car. Like we got plenty of those.
The parents never forget those sort of things. You damage something and you're done for life.
Well, my father parked the car right behind the backstop that had no, like at the baseball field, that had no top over the backstop. So Deco hits a foul ball, and then bang, crushes the windshield. And my mother never let my father hear the end of that,
I actually remember a different story where it was like a 350-foot home run and he parked like behind the fence. I don't remember a foul ball. I don't remember that.
Yeah. Okay. You can remember it that way and I can remember reality. So
fair enough.
Dude, I'm so looking forward to this conversation today because coming off the Austin, Texas immersion, you had such an incredible moment, not just for you, but you created a moment for all of the men in the group to shed tears, to, in my case, apologize. In many other men's cases, to release old tension and old stress and wounds based on you sharing a story about the life path that you've struggled with the most. So maybe I'll hand the context over to you to kind of set the framework for what was the thing you brought to our group and tell that story.
Yeah, I'm really excited to relive this moment and share this with everyone. And I need to set the table a little bit. As I'm driving down, I live in Dallas, Texas, and I'm driving down to Austin. And within the last 20 minutes of my drive, before I'm actually going to pick up one of our brothers at the airport, I decided to check in on what's the latest episode of The Great Man Within. And it was the episode with Mordecai about body shame. And I only got about 25 minutes in, but the whole story, it was like I could have been talking. I resonated with so much, but I got cut off right at that time. And it was the part where he talked about, he was at a retreat. He always had trouble taking his shirt off. And I encouraged him to just go down by the pool, take your shirt off, see how that felt. And then I got cut off. And that seed was planted right before I entered the immersion weekend, which was just so powerful. And then there was the opportunity, as there was throughout the whole weekend, for many of the men to come forward and share something that was weighing on them or they were struggling with. And I'll never forget, Keith Bracci, who this audience is getting to know really well, and rightfully so. He's awesome. His words, because he always does a great job whenever there's a pause or maybe someone's hesitant to come forward. And he said, guys, this is such a gift that we get to come forward and you get to talk about something that you're struggling with a space of men that you're comfortable with and trust. And that idea of gift just resonated with me. But at the moment, I felt like I was in receiving mode. I wanted to receive. I didn't feel at the time I wanted to give, but something clicked between that episode that I listened to and this idea of a gift that I wanted to take advantage of. So I had my opportunity the weekend to start talking about my issues with body shame and about how I always loved the person I was on the inside, but at times I hated the outer shell, looking at my body, struggling with body image. And I had this idea that I was going to talk about this story in front of the group. And at some point, I was going to take my shirt off and continue talking about it. And then I finally did. I kind of felt like I was delaying the inevitable, a little bit of maybe what I'm doing right now, but I did it. And I'm uncomfortable talking to a group of men with my clothes on, taking my shirt off and having those insecurities from all the days growing up and going to the pool and going to the beach and just always being insecure about that moment where I would have to take my shirt off. To be able to take advantage of that opportunity. And the reason I did that is because of the men and the group I trusted. I felt comfortable and I so desperately craved what it would feel like to throw off my shirt and embrace and not have any gasps, not have any laughs, but just be in that moment with the rest of the men that I trusted in that space. And it was so powerful.
Yeah, man, I was sitting right next to you in that circle of 20. And when you spoke up and you said, guys, you're going to have to bear with me because there's something I want to do and I'm feeling really anxious right now. And as soon as you said those words, I knew what you were about to do. Like I just knew it, right? Because you and I have spoken for a long time about, for many years of your life, you know, you've had your weight go up and then you've had your weight go down, and like, you know how to bring your weight down. And then once it's there, it's kind of, you lose your motivation, the weight goes back up in the struggle. And over the recent years, you've shared more with me about what it feels like to be around a group of guys. And when the shirts come off, you know, I have the privilege of not thinking about that, but every time that the shirts come off, you have to think about that. And there's an anticipation of that. And you've helped me to understand what that's like for you on the inside. And so when this moment arose and you were like, I'm going to do this thing, I started to get emotional right away. Like I could feel tears coming up because I could feel that this was a moment, a turning point in your life. So I just want to know what was going on in your body, because I could see what was going on, but like maybe for our audience, like what was going on in your body when you came to grips with, this is happening. I'm about to do this.
It's funny you say body because it almost felt like an out of body experience. Such a unique and different feeling for me as I'm getting ready to, you know, take my shirt off and experience what that felt like. I almost literally felt the layers of insecurity, just shedding layers as I did it. And I have to credit one of the brothers in the group because I was sitting down at the time. It was probably my own inner critic insecurity said like, well, I'm going to do this and it's going to be powerful. But I was sitting down. I wasn't in like the middle of the group, but I wasn't like puffing out my chest. And as respectfully as he could have done, he challenged me to get in the middle of the group and to spin around like a model almost. And I'm so thankful he challenged me to do that because that brought it to a whole nother level. I locked eyes with every man in the group as I did it.
Yeah.
And even though no words were shared, it was my way of kind of saying thank you to each one of those men that made me feel comfortable in that space to do what I did. And the funniest part about that is after I did it, I'll never forget, you told me, all right, do that 5 times more slowly. And so I heard those words and I was like, fuck, 5 more times. So you just meant to do it 5 times as slow as the first time.
Yeah, because you spun around pretty quick. Yeah.
I did it.
You did it
5 more times.
You looked a little bit like a sexy helicopter. That's true.
It was fast. Yeah.
It felt kind of overkill, to be honest, but it was great. I mean, honestly, it was great shirtless therapy, which I know Mordecai talks about, but just doing that was so powerful.
Deco, you mentioned Keith saying, hey, this is a gift, like an opportunity to take. And the gift that you're describing from your perspective is one of you shedding those layers and shirtless therapy. But you gave that group, including myself, a beautiful gift in that moment, because there are a few times on this inner work journey where we get to physically witness the inner work happening. From when you were sitting down and covering up your body with your shirt, how tense your hands were, how tense your voice was, to be able to see you stand up and let loose, let go of the shirt, let go of the tenseness. It was a moment where we could actually see the physical transformation happen.
Yeah.
And you mentioned this version that's inside you not matching the outside version of you. Yeah. And Dominic, you've mentioned on your journey before about there was like this secret part of you and this outer part of you. And watching that collision happen was epic.
Yeah.
It was something that made me desire, like, wow, I want that kind of alignment in my life. So thank you for you giving that gift to the rest of the group.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that part because that was a part, I really wasn't thinking about during my share, but sure enough, so many guys came up to me after and explained how much that unlocked something for them, and their issues may not have been body image or whatever, but it unlocked something with whatever they were struggling with or vulnerable with. And that's why if I had to sum up the weekend, is that vulnerability equals power. And if you're willing to unlock that, how much it could just exponentially grow from there. I mean, I look at Mordecai was my catalyst. Like all it took was 20, 25 minutes of that episode. And I don't even think we mentioned how crazy it was that I eventually listened to that podcast the rest of the way on my way home. And he talks about how he finally went and took off his shirt in front of like all 30 people. It almost mimicked exactly the exercise that I did, which I found so crazy. And since then, I've actually had an opportunity to connect with him. And I wanted to thank him, just like so many men thanked me after, about giving them that gift of just feeling comfortable. If you guys remember, and you guys talked about it on the last podcast, we did the Wild Man episode soon thereafter, where we had to all take our shirts off. One of the other brothers came up to me and he's like, because we had that experience, when it was time to take our shirts off, I didn't think about it. I was comfortable and I could really enjoy the Wild Man exercise without being in my own head about me being with my shirt off. And so just hearing that was like, wow, that share gave me so much, but to hear that it gave everyone else something too was just so special.
Yeah. And in your words, the chain reaction of vulnerability, right? It's kind of like Morty shares, it creates this chain reaction where you get to do something that then affects someone else who then no longer has to think about their shirt coming off. Someone's listening to this right now and it's like, boom, 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 boom. And that's such a vibration lifter. One last thing about this particular part of the story, Deco, before we'll start to move on to some other really powerful parts of your journey. The moment that came up between you and I, as you were standing in the middle of that circle, as Brian said, watching that energy that was inside of you, which was really frenetic and nervous and anxious because it wasn't something you'd ever done before. And then watching it just kind of like settle into this like really confident, grounded space where like you were just radiating power. Once that happened, then I stepped forward and I looked you in the eyes, and I'm getting a little choked up thinking about this too. And I remember taking a really deep breath and looking at your eyes and saying, dude, I am so sorry for all the times that I teased you about your weight when we were younger. And, I remember teasing you, when you kept your shirt on at the pool, making jokes and not needing to go into the details, but just, you know, all the things. And I looked at you and I said, man, if there's anything that you need to clear with me right now, like I'm an open book, like here you go, have at it. I'm curious I know obviously what you said to me, but what came up for you in that particular moment?
Yeah, that was an amazing experience. Our friendship has been so strong, like you alluded to earlier in the episode. I've always seen us as brothers. And now that we've been on this journey for the last 16 months as part of this mastermind, I didn't know we could crack through ceilings of just greater friendship and greater brotherhood, but we had. And in that moment, it was like the rest of the 20 men kind of went away, and it was just a moment we shared, that I'll never forget. But the first thing that came up to me is while I appreciated the apology, it was not something I needed. I didn't feel like I needed it. I know we teased each other a lot growing up. Maybe some of it was weight related. I don't remember so much of it weight related. I definitely remember other kids and, part of my own inner critic, honestly, that was partly responsible for the insecurities, but still a special moment we shared that I know a lot of the other brothers got a lot out of it too, just witnessing that.
Yeah, man. I mean, your grace and acceptance of that apology meant the world to me. It left like a big weight left me in that. A few of the other guys came up to me afterwards. One of the men who obviously, weight is a story of his as well. And he said, thank you. Like, thank you for doing that. I would want that from some people in my life. And another man who hasn't had weight struggles in his life came up to me and said, thank you for that. I've been on your side of the fence and I carry shame and I want to make amends for that. Again, that chain reaction of vulnerability that you talk about, Deco. And there's so many important parts to your story. And I think what could be really powerful is maybe just backtracking a little bit in time, because you have this condition that you have to manage. It's a life-threatening, very rare condition that you and your son have to navigate. And you experienced something that brought you to the edge, 6 months ago. Explain a little bit about what that is. And then we can talk about how, being in a community really helps support you through one of the most scary parts of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So, quick backstory on that condition and how I found out that I had it. I was 37 years old. My son at the time, he was a few months old, had some issues, needed to be on a feeding tube and things like that. Fortunately, fast forward, he's okay now, but it caused us to get genetic testing to just kind of curious as to what might be causing all that. And so parents got genetic testing as well. And we weren't expecting anything to show up, but sure enough, something did. And it's this condition called vascular EDS. EDS stands for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It's a rare genetic connective tissue disorder. So connective tissue makes up veins and arteries. And, we just have more fragile, arteries than the average person, which makes us susceptible to aneurysms is one of the key things that can be, serious and life-threatening. So that diagnosis was about 5 years ago. Genetic condition I had my entire life, never knew about. But fortunately now we have knowledge about it. And there's a lot of proactive things not only I can do, but my son can do that hopefully can manage this thing long term. But then January of this year happened, and I was going through a pretty stressful time at work. I was CEO of a software company, and there was change of leadership, but I was going to continue on as an executive member of the team. I was having struggles getting through that because I had tied up I've talked about this with the Mastermind group before, how much I tied up my identity and wanting to make that startup something big and successful. And then when it was apparent that I wasn't going to be the one necessarily leading the way, I struggled with that. But you and I even had a conversation. I think the event happened on January 12th. I think this was probably 2 or 3 days before that. And I thank you for that conversation because it really helped put a lot into perspective, helped me figure out a lot that I was going to be at peace with the decision going forward. And I was going to support the company however they wanted me to support it going forward. But then 3 days later, I had a life-threatening, limb-threatening event. Out of nowhere, I felt a sharp pain in my upper groin thigh area that I knew was not right. Caused us to go to the hospital within 10 or 15 minutes. I started losing feeling throughout my entire leg, numbness, tingling. And I was literally just 10 feet where I'm talking to you right now, picking out what shirt I was going to wear. Was feeling fine 1 second. And then boom, something was really wrong the next. And fortunately, I got the care I needed in time. Surgery went okay. And it was an arterial dissection, 3.5-inch dissection of my iliac artery leading down to my femoral artery. Fortunately, with a few stents, they were able to place and secure the blood flow. So I didn't lose my leg. It's kind of surreal even talking about that was even on the table, like as a possibility.
It was touch and go there, right? I mean, like when we were going through it, like I just remember you texted me, you're like, dude, I need you. And I remember talking to you in the hospital before anything had been figured out. And like a reality was you could lose your leg. And it was, like you said, just like that, feeling great one moment, having just played with your daughter, to the next moment of thinking about the rest of your life without one of your limbs. So this was, I just wanted to add the additional gravity of that moment because I was there. It was really scary. I can't even imagine what it would have been like for you and your family.
Yeah, you mentioned that playing with my daughter. I had even posted something on Instagram. We were playing something stupid like store, and she was deciding what to sell. It's like a great moment. But then like the dichotomy of like being in that moment, having fun with my 4-year-old daughter. And then 20 minutes later being rushed to the hospital, like just mind blowing. But through the grace of God and just putting all my faith there, the surgery was a success. I was in the hospital a few days and been working on my recovery ever since for the last 5 months. And, I mentioned recovery. There was certainly a physical part of it that hasn't been easy, but I knew going into it, it was the mental recovery that was going to be the more challenging part. And to have the mastermind, to have you guys, to have that backdrop to go to during that time. I remember once I finally was feeling good enough, I kind of presented my story to the group within a week or two of the surgery. And to have that was just game changer.
We knew as participants in the mastermind, we knew that you were out for a little while, that something really serious was going on. And there was an air of concern, of like one wondering, like, I wonder how he's doing. And then when you came in and described what you went through, not only just like this audience just heard, but also the now what questions were lingering in the air. Now that you have this condition, and I don't want to be crass, but some of the language that came up was like ticking time bomb, and like, how do you deal with that?
Right.
And so there's still a question like this is still a condition that you're going through that I know you're doing big things about. What is it like living on that edge?
Great question, Brian. I'm so glad you mentioned the ticking time bomb, because you're right. I kind of felt that even before the surgery, but then it was amplified post-surgery. Like, oh my gosh, like the shoe could drop the next moment. I could be feeling fine 1 second. That might not even matter. 5 minutes later, something real serious could happen. So I mentioned this feeling of ticking time bomb. I've actually been on support calls with other people with this condition. Their go-to is they feel like a sniper is like pointed at them at all times. Someone's ready to fire and they just don't know when.
Oof.
Which is like, just hearing that and talking about it is like, wow, that is so heavy, right? If you feel that way. But here's where the power of reframing comes in. And, another moment, I'm going to say this a lot, but I'll never forget, as I told my story, mentioned ticking time bomb. Mark Melvin came in and he's just like, Deco, I don't see you as a ticking time bomb. Here you are, like within a week or two of a crazy life-threatening, limb-threatening surgery. You're giving your powerful story. You're making me tear up. You diagnosed the situation. You got the care you needed. You took it seriously, and boom, here you are. He's like, I see you as a bomb disposal technician. And like, it just hit me. I was like, that reframe, right?
Yeah.
Fuck the ticking time bomb. I am a bomb disposal technician.
Yeah.
And and it sucks living with this, but you know what? Like, living with that mindset is another game changer. And so I thank him constantly for giving me that nugget that I also use to help inspire others who are struggling with this.
Let's look at that particular point in time. Like, if you go from that point in time with the one mindset of I'm a ticking time bomb, or I'm a sniper, there's a sniper pointed with his gun at my head, and you live the rest of your life that way. Just think of the mental and emotional and spiritual implications of that. The stress on your inside, how you show up every day, the decisions that you make, the behavior that results, the impact on the people around you, the business around you. That's one path. The other path is I'm a bomb disposal technician. Like, I'm badass. Yes, I work in a dangerous field, like I am around bombs, but like I'm pretty damn tuned in on how to diffuse these things. And then you walk around with a totally different mindset for the rest of your life, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. To me, that just again goes to this power of, you talked about vulnerability, being able to open up about this stuff, and then having the support network of a group of men who you can trust with this information, who you can reveal this to and know that they're going to be there with the proper care. Like, that is literally a life-changing proposition based on that one share and that one interaction that you had with Mark.
100%. And, who knows? Maybe I would have gotten there on my own, but you know what? It could have taken years. And I have this work in the mastermind and the inner work we've all been doing to thank for just cutting down so much time of the processing and the acceptance and the grief. I'm not saying it's like you eliminate it. Like, you're human. Everyone goes through the grief stages, but I feel like my ability to process and go through those as productively as possible with the backdrop of the mastermind, with the support, I'm cutting something that would take anyone maybe years to process and get comfortable with. And I feel like I'm doing in record time in a very healthy and productive way. One thing I forgot to mention actually earlier, which is important to mention in my backstory with VEDS, is it solved a 35 plus year mystery with my family history of my father passing away at a young age when I was 7 years old of an aortic aneurysm, something we didn't think was genetic or hereditary, turns out was, which added a whole level of gravity to the situation for me as now a parent of two. The fact that I lived, most of my life without my father there and present has actually made me really want to be present for my kids. But now that I have this health condition thrown on top of it, it's been pretty tough to deal with, knowing that something could happen at any moment. But it makes me appreciate every moment I have with my kids, and my wife gives me that perspective to take advantage of every moment. And I think ultimately, makes me a better man for it.
Deco, what do you do with the fear? Oftentimes we talk about emotional literacy. And being a bomb disposal technician, I imagine, comes with some of that emotion around fear. What do you do with that now when it comes up?
Honestly, what I didn't do before is confront it, like almost talk to it in a way and acknowledge it. That's what I'm doing now. I'll give you a perfect example. In the moment, I don't think I've told anyone this yet. My son is weeks away from turning 7 years old. I was 7 years old when my father passed away. That brings up a lot of emotions, a lot of fear, but I'm talking about it. I'm talking to you guys about it. I'm not hiding from it. I'm making it something real. And I think just being able to process that and put it out there, being vulnerable enough to talk about it is what I'm doing to conquer those fears.
Yeah, man. And I just think about what you've been through over this last year, really even like 8 months, 9 months, and what you've been through with your profession, right? Where you were the president or the CEO of a company and they decided to move another direction, and the emotional turmoil that you went through for months leading up to that, and then dealing with that. As that was happening, you had the aneurysm, which could have been life-threatening or losing a limb. On top of all that, it was COVID, so that all happened at the same time. That could cripple another person, truly cripple another person. And you went through some dark days, like no question. You have come out so much stronger, so quickly. That's attributed to not only your character and like your resilience. And I've seen your resilience throughout the entirety of your life. Like you've been through some really difficult stuff. And also like you're doing the work. Like that's what happens when you do the work. Again, this could have taken a very different trajectory, but you showed up, you leveraged the support, you didn't keep it to yourself. And now, why don't you talk about a couple of the new things that you've just launched and the missions that you're after? Like talk about how those endings spawned new beginnings for you.
Yeah. One of the nuggets, and I just want to thank you for saying all that. That really makes me feel great, but it hasn't been all by myself, obviously. I've leveraged the support, and even another nugget, one of the brothers of the Mastermind gave me, which is a great segue into some of these other things, is that within a month of my surgery, he just subtly said the words, crisis equals opportunity. And that has been my mantra, my reframe, my guiding light through a lot of this recovery, both physical and mental. And so I have decided to kind of take this crisis, in dealing with vascular EDS and see what opportunity I can provide for others. See if I could be a beacon of light or inspiration for others also who are suffering from vascular EDS or just a rare disease in general, or just anything. So I tied it back to an ailment that I physically had, because again, like we talked about, the possibility of losing my leg was real. And so while not embarking on anything too crazy, I wanted to do a physical challenge the rest of the year that involved my legs. So getting steps was something appropriate for me and as part of my recovery. And so I created the Walk with Deco mission. The goal is to raise $40,000 for vascular EDS and walk 4 million steps by the end of this year. And that's the opportunity I created from this crisis. You even gave me the great idea of just to continue to build upon that idea and make it big. And I developed a podcast to kind of document that journey along the way. It's the Walk with Deco podcast. And I created a website, walkwithdeco.com. We've been saying Deco this whole time. My name is Mike for anyone who's curious. But anyway, everyone knows me as Deco. It's kind of like, it's my nod that like, if you're calling me Deco, you're in the inner circle. And I'm blessed to have so many great people in that inner circle. But yeah, I just really felt called to take this crisis and make it an opportunity and do something big and go after a big challenge. And again, even deciding to do that was also inspired by Michael Young and the jump rope challenge this year. I mean, he helped give me a framework for going after something like this. It's just that chain reaction.
And for anyone who is not familiar, Michael Young, one of the other guys in the Mastermind, has been on this podcast. He jumped roped 1 million times last year and raised $50,000 for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society because he's a 2-time leukemia survivor. So yeah, like you had that blueprint. I know Michael and you have a really close connection too. So you've decided to raise $40,000 and you got out of the gates pretty fast, right? Like, didn't you raise like 15,000 already?
Yeah, we're up over 15,000 already in just like the first month, which is awesome. I've I've been asked to do other podcasts that are focused on vascular EDS. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of momentum behind it. I'm excited, to really embark on this journey and make a difference in this community of people that are struggling with this. And it is so rare that, there's not a lot of great places to turn to. So a lot of what I'm learning in the mastermind, I won't say steal, but I'm sampling and repurposing to help others in this community.
Seeing you go from hiding, I'm afraid of this, I'm hiding, I'm not going to address it, to I'm going to create. It's amazing the turnaround time that we've been able to witness you go through. Like, what does that feel like? Going from someone that was hiding, fearful, to, sure, I feel it, but I'm literally creating $15,000, boom, from nothing.
It's an awesome feeling. I mean, to use a sports analogy, right? It's like, it doesn't feel like you're just constantly playing defense, which can get so tiring, right?
Yeah.
It feels like, all right, let's put a strategic plan in place and play some offense here. And that's kind of what it feels like. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, even, tying this crazy story about vascular ADS, one of my latest podcasts is about the body shame and the experience at the mastermind I talked about, which adds a whole nother layer of, with this condition, putting extra pressure on me to keep the weight down and stay as healthy as possible as the way to tie it back in. And I just created something, Mordecai even told me, he's like, this shirtless therapy, like you have to keep doing it. It's like getting your reps in. And so I created a piece of content yesterday that a blip of it was me without my shirt on. And I would have never done that like a year or two ago.
And I see you smiling right now as you're telling this. You got a giant smile on your face.
Right. It sounds crazy, right? But like you said, I'm creating, I'm enjoying, and I'm just following my energy.
This reminds me this was maybe 7, 8, 9 months ago. We had a mastermind session where you two were in a breakout group together. And I don't remember what the prompt was, but Deco, you were talking about how, like your body and your weight was always a thing for you. Like, and you were always thinking about it. And I remember, Brian, you said, hey, Deco, what would it be like if you never had to think about this anymore? I'm curious to know what your answer was at the time, Deco. And what are you feeling now with response to that same question?
Yeah, that's a great question. At the time, I was probably like, it's not possible. It's a great thought in theory.
What your actual response was, like, that would be fucking amazing.
Would be.
like it's almost like I've never even thought about that. It's not even a possibility.
Exactly. Yeah, it would be. But then I probably quickly went to, but it's impossible. But now it doesn't seem impossible. I mean, even in the weeks after the mastermind, the irony is my eating habits and they've been okay. They haven't been great. It's not like I've gone on some crazy health kick over the last 2 weeks. But the bigger difference is, for lack of a better phrase, like caring less, and that weight of the body and layers of insecurity that I had. I'm not saying they're completely gone. Like, this will take time, but a lot of it's not there anymore. And that levity and lightness, how much it could open yourself up to just other things that you didn't know possible, just like that concept we talked about, makes it now something that is possible.
Here's a question. You said, for lack of a better phrase, caring less. Let me offer this and see if it resonates more. And if not, you can tell me to go screw. But instead of caring less, it feels to me like you're loving more. Like you're learning how to love the outside more.
Yes, absolutely. And I guess I should have been more specific, caring less about what other people think, and not to sound crass in saying that, but just knowing I am who I am. Yeah, that's a great reframe, because I am loving myself more. That outer shell that I had such struggle with loving, it's feeling easier to love that part of me.
Something Mordecai mentioned on the podcast with us is that the inside has to change first, right? We're always so focused on the outside, but until that identity shifts, the outside is just temporary. And I always thought that was that moment for me was like, wow. I thought that once the outside changed, then the inside would catch up and say, oh, like, okay, I guess this is who I am now. And so it sounds like that transition you're going through, Deco, is what he's talking about, where it's like the inside actually has to change first. I care less about what other people are thinking and more about where I'm at. And that seems powerful.
Spot on.
That goes back to James Clear and Atomic Habits, right? Like, and the biggest takeaway from that book is our behaviors don't change because we try to change the wrong thing. We try to change the behaviors first instead of changing the identity. because your identity is the single biggest driver of your behaviors. And, Deco, this goes back to, you've experienced over the course of your life kind of that yo-yoing between, hey, I'll put on 30 or 40 pounds and then I get really motivated. I'll lose the weight. But when I get to that weight, I still in my mind have that identity, that belief of I'm a person who struggles with weight. And then it's just a matter of time. And then eventually, boom, like that, the cycle continues. And it's only when that identity shifts do the rest of the behavior shift. And like you said, Bri, like that's an inside job.
Yeah. I always made weight loss a game, like a competition. And I loved it. Like I celebrated. I posted on Facebook. It was like, wow, look at me. I'm getting down to this number. And then I'd hit that number and I didn't feel anything. I was down to a weight I was happy with, but I still didn't like the way I looked. And then it's like, there's nothing exciting about celebrating. Hey, I've plateaued for the last 3 weeks at a healthy weight, like that's not exciting to promote on social media. But like, I was kind of misguided through all that. I was letting that kind of become my identity in this game and just the thrill of winning this competition. Whereas now this is a whole lot deeper and it's less linear this way, like, whereas like weight loss is like, all right, I'm tracking, I'm losing weight. I know it's working, but then that's why people yo-yo. That's why people go in and out of these diets and fads, is because they don't work on the true identity piece of what needs to change to get rid of those bad habits.
And we do the same shit with like relationships, kind of that excitement of going after someone new. And then when the plateau happens, it's like, well, that's no fun anymore. So then I'm going to detonate that and then start all over again. Or with work and business, like there's a lot of people who say, I don't know how to handle things when when all is going well. Like when all is going well, it's kind of boring. And then I will create a crisis. I will do something to self-sabotage just so then I can like be motivated again to build back up. And then life becomes that way. It's a cool parallel, Deco, that you brought up here to be able to take a look at all other areas of our lives.
I was feeling really bad for plateaus, actually. Like plateaus get a really bad rap. And honestly, they're not bad. Like if you hit a good spot and you plateau, like cool, you're there.
Give some PR to plateau. If you were hired as the PR consultant to rebrand plateaus in a powerful way, what would Brian Stacy have to say about plateaus?
It would be something around get high and stay there. Like who doesn't want to do that?
I like that as a tagline.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Last place to go here, and then we'll wrap is Deco. You got to take us all the way back to our childhood, back in the day when we were kids. One of the things that was most legendary was coming to the DeCoursey's house. Marion DeCoursey, Mrs. DeCoursey, otherwise known as Mariucci, one of the greatest cooks you will ever experience. Italian, unbelievable. And sitting around her dinner table was something that like things of legend. Deco, what was that like growing up, having that as an every night experience in your home?
So I love that side of my mom that shows her love through food, especially, my dad passing away at an early age. Like I said, that's where I went for comfort and peace. But she always cooked for an army. And
yeah,
it probably taught me some things about portion control that maybe not have been healthy. Or she was also a stickler for, never wanting to waste food. So it's like you have this person who shows her love for food, doesn't want you to waste it. I would have you over, one person over for dinner, and the meal could have been for 20 people.
Not exaggerating.
So, yeah, there was that part of me for sure that didn't want to disappoint my mom because that's how she showed her love. So, yeah, growing up, I probably ate more than the average person. Eating kind of became, one of my superpowers in a way.
Actually, when you say that, I'll give you the option. There has been a story we've told about on this podcast where we protected the innocent, and you were a Rick. You were a Rick in one of the previous episodes. Do you want to claim responsibility for one of those stories?
So I do, because I have it even on my notes typed out that I was going to reveal that. So I have no problem blowing up my identity here. That was me behind the Taco Bell party pack challenge. Even when the first time I really ballooned up in weight, you were right there along with me at University of Richmond. How many times did we go to Taco Bell? We knew the guy's name at the Taco Bell window. Tone the Bone for whatever reason. You have a problem when you actually are a first name basis with the guy at the window. But yeah. I truly think we were the inspiration for the fourth meal marketing concept at Taco Bell.
I think so too. Yeah,
absolutely.
Because we went after midnight 4 nights a week, and by the end of the year, like we would get a supersized thing. At the end of the year, the collector's cups that were in our apartment, we threw out over 100 collector's cups from Taco Bell.
Yes, I was the Rick. I don't know if any other Rick has been blown up like this before, but I'm happy to do so. That was the episode on adventure, I believe. And I don't recommend that as an adventure. We have like you said, we have the adventures of like 20 years ago and maybe the more healthy, productive adventures that we're going to embark on now.
And if you didn't hear that episode on adventures, Deco ended up eating an entire grande meal, which is 10 soft tacos, hard tacos, bean burritos, a nachos Bel Grande, and a Mexican pizza. And he finished that. And then we tried to drive back from Washington, D.C. to Hoboken, New Jersey. 15 minutes into the trip, we had to pull over. He projectile vomited on the side of the highway. A cicada bug flew down the front of his shirt as he was bent over, dry heaving, and it was flapping. It was the size of a bird, and it was flapping around in his shirt. And then he pulls his shirt up over his head, and the shirt gets stuck over his head as he's like pirouetting on the side of the highway. And cars are like, I
think the cicada has like grown as the story has been told over the years. Like in another 10 years, it's going to be like a hawk or an eagle.
A pterodactyl. Yeah.
You absolutely have to stir the story pot as stories age.
You told that story at my wedding, I think.
Oh, did I?
I think so.
Oh my God.
You have another apology, Dominic. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just didn't want to waste food. So you're welcome, Taco Bell. And, just being, ingrained with that growing up. But, I love that part of my mom. And, it just caused me to work on that relationship with food a little bit over the years. And, I wouldn't want it any other way.
I think we can all relate to having some sort of comfort thing, that at one point in our lives, like it provided this benefit. And then over the course of time, it becomes limiting. For me, my comfort thing was masturbation. And that was the thing that kind of saved me when I didn't have any emotional mechanisms like breath work or meditation or being able to talk about stuff with other people. And then over time, it caused me to have intimacy issues. And so that's why coming together in these kinds of conversations, talking about this stuff, looking at it, having support of other guys. And Deco, like you were talking about, that chain reaction of vulnerability. When one man speaks openly about what's going on in his inner world, then it creates this domino effect for others. My work is your work. Your work is my work.
Well said.
Well, I hope you were as inspired as Brian and I were hearing Deco's stories about how he stepped towards the thing that scares him the most. So now it's time for you to take action. What is something that you have been preventing yourself, blocking yourself from doing because you are afraid? And by stepping towards that, you will break free from those shackles of limitation and liberate yourself living as your great man. Why don't you come into the Facebook group for men? I'll link it in the show notes. Let us know. What is that thing that has been holding you back from going after what you want that you will be taking action on? And like we said in the show, having a group of men that are there supporting you, being witness to that thing, allows you to step and take bigger risks and to go after the thing that you want.